The rate at which the federal government is spending money and accumulating debt is unsustainable and is pushing us ever closer to a full-blown debt crisis that has the potential to wreck our economy, which is already struggling, and unravel our society, which is already fraying. What can we do to bring this under control, and what will it mean if we don't? We'll discuss this and more, along with our PoC Top-3 and some odd little tidbits from our News You Can't Use file. That's all coming up on the Physics of Civics. This episode of the Physics of Civics is brought to you by Savage Soaps. Shop savagesoaps.com for all natural, handcrafted soaps and other skin-loving products for men and women. All made right here in America from sustainably sourced, plant-based ingredients. Get wet with Savage. When individuals recklessly spend exorbitant amounts of money that they don't have on things that they don't need and accumulate more debt than they can afford to pay, while all the while rationalizing it as all absolutely necessary, such people are considered to have a serious problem, right?
Yeah.
An addiction, you might say, a severe compulsive disorder that requires intervention and treatment. If a private company attempted to operate that way, it would go up in smoke. It would go bankrupt. And its executives would all be indicted on fraud charges. Yet, this is how federal agencies have worked for generations when it comes to spending taxpayer money. And it's a problem.
Do you think?
Here's the problem in a nutshell. Every year, we, meaning the government, spend more than we take in, and we have to borrow the rest. Every year, that borrowed amount gets added to the debt, which is currently above $37 trillion, an astronomical number.
Can't even visualize that many zeros, right?
And every year, that debt accrues interest, and every year, an interest payment comes due. At the current rate, and at the current rate of increase, the payment on the interest will eventually exceed annual federal revenues. Now, that's
not
money.
Good.
No, that's not good. That's money that isn't going to pay for roads and bridges and education and healthcare and the poor and anything. Okay? That means we are headed towards a default if we don't get this under control. And defaulting on that payment is sure to have dire consequences.
Absolutely.
So how did this happen?
It's not uncommon to go into debt or to use debt as a financial tool, like
Right.
a business during downtimes of revenue or, cash flow situations, you borrow money.
Right. Not uncommon at all.
Not uncommon at all. And then when times are better, you pay it off. Now, the United States government has done this and it's accepted. It's part of financial norm. But at certain times, like after wars or during wars, we see our debt accelerate. I mean, that goes with every major war.
Because the winning the war is
expensive.
But it's the most important thing. It's the critical thing.
Right.
You got to win the war. It's worth it. Yeah.
It's like a business saying, "Oh, we want to get into the market in Korea," for an example, and it's going to cost us $1 billion to open an office there, build a plant. So we're going to borrow the money, and then the money we make when we start selling in Korea will pay it off. That's the way, and that has been how it worked with the U.S. government, from the Civil War to World War I to World War II. Each time the debt accelerated exponentially. And World War II was the most. I mean, think about how much money we had to spend to win World War II. We weren't around then, but, our parents and grandparents told us about it. They were rationing. It was a lot of money was spent. Our debt reached 120% of the GDP after World War II. Historically, that debt shrinks afterwards.
It's a wartime debt, and then you go back to normal, and it shrinks.
Yeah, and that's always been the case. Like in the 50s and 60s here, we had a boom because the war was over. People started, mostly men in those days came back from war and went to work. So the economy exploded. And the 50s and 60s were great. Then we had a problem in the late 70s again during the Carter years because of policy shifts and other things, and the debt climbed. And then Reagan came in and changed policies, and it got better again. The debt fell. The issue here is that since the early 2000s, we've been on a spike. we've had no
respite. Yeah.
no respite in the increase of the debt. And of course, that peaked during COVID. And it was back to like 120 or 125% of GDP. It was huge.
So in other words, we owe more money than the entire country makes in a year.
In a year, we spend 20% more than we bring in. Imagine, like you said earlier in the introduction, if you or I did that, if we spent 20% more than we make every year for extending out over a 20, 25-year period as we've done, it can be catastrophic.
Right.
Another issue I think we'd have to look at is entitlement programs. And I mean, that's the third rail. No politician wants to touch it. We need to figure something out. Right. Social Security is supposed to go bankrupt in like 7 years or 10 years, whatever it is. I mean, we've got to look at it. We've got to figure something out. The current estimate is that this mandatory spending now, which is what we would call entitlements. In other words, based on law, you have to spend this money.
Yeah. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and certain welfare programs.
Certain welfare. It runs at 20% of our GDP now, Phil.
Yeah.
A fifth of all the money we take in goes to these entitlement programs. And that doesn't include things like the defense and other necessary things. This is just entitlement payment. That's something that we need to look at for sure. Also, we have a bloated bureaucracy.
Oh, my goodness.
We've reached a point now, based on the latest final statistics, which are the Bureau of Labor's from 2022, 13.5% of working Americans work for the government.
That's ridiculous.
Is that crazy? I mean, whether it's federal, local, state, 13.5%. That's crazy.
These are the numbers that when you get into this area, you start looking at the statistics, it blows you away.
Yeah, especially if you're in business and you understand business, or if you have any kind of understanding of finances and economy, you realize this is devastating. And the other thing that both the entitlement programs and the bloated bureaucracy do is they've created this dependency. Don't you think, Phil?
Absolutely. Without question. It's unhealthy.
And you're looked down upon by certain people if you even bring it up. But the fact is, for example, welfare. Welfare is a great program. It was originally designed for people who were having tough times. Financially, maybe you have a medical issue, can't work for a while, and it's supposed to help you out by the government sends you a check for a period of time, 10 weeks or maybe up to 6 months to help you get your feet back on the ground. The problem now is that we've got literally generations of families who generation after generation live on welfare. They don't get jobs. They don't work.
Right.
And they're able-bodied.
And they are stuck in a mere subsistence level of existence.
The way you need to look at it, it's so cruel to them.
Yeah, it's cruel.
Because there's no motivation for them to make their lives better.
Right.
Because they're just going to get a check.
Right. And so many fathers are taken out of the equation because the government is your father. The government is the provider.
And the mothers are paid to have children. And if they have a husband at home, they get less money.
The welfare state tells fathers that you're unnecessary and tells mothers that you're hopeless, basically. It's cruel, just like you say.
Back to the bloating in the government. In a lot of parts of the government, you've got, 6, 8, 10 employees doing a job that in the private sector, one person does. To give you an example, if you look at NPR or some of these publicly funded establishments, they'll have a radio show that's an hour-long show, and they have a staff of 100. They have a caterer and a chef, 10 writers, and then Rogan has 3 guys.
3 guys.
That's an example of the bloat. Because why? Because there's no oversight.
Right.
There's no CEO, there's no president saying, "Oh, guys, you're spending way too much money. We need to cut costs."
And it's almost as if it's a kind of an unspoken rule, a strategy, you might say, among, the government, that this kind of dependency is what keeps them in their jobs.
Yeah.
It's deliberate. They promote this kind of dependency.
It's
not
mindset.
Just, it is not an unintended consequence.
No, and I think certain politicians and political factions use it as a tool for votes because they make these promises. so-and-so wants to take away your this and take away your that and your health care and your welfare and and it scares people into voting. But if you look at the history of these programs, they never change. They never pay these people more money. They're
Not
always
really.
just enough to subside, just enough to get by. Those are some of the obvious issues.
And speaking of mindsets, there is a political mindset that it's not exclusive to the left or the right, but it is a feature of the political left where people suffer from an affliction that I call Krugman's disease.
Paul Krugman?
Named after the economist, and I use the term loosely, Paul Krugman. It's a cognitive disorder in which the patient suffers under the dual delusion that A, there is no problem in our society that cannot be solved through massive government spending, and B, that there is no limit to the amount of funds available for the government to spend.
It's insane.
The Krugman's disease sufferer will persist in these fantasies even when faced with overwhelming factual evidence that not only has the massive spending failed to solve the problem, but it's actually made the problem worse and sometimes caused more problems.
Created new problems. Absolutely.
Right. In these situations, the patient becomes convinced that the only possible explanation for such failure is that the spending was not massive enough and should be increased. And now these symptoms are typically accompanied by feelings of intellectual and or moral superiority combined with an undisguised hostility towards those who don't participate in these delusions. And now treatment for Krugman's disease has been largely elusive. However, in isolated cases, being mugged by reality has been proven most effective. Now, I joke about this, or I used to joke about this, but this is kind of like, Trump derangement syndrome. It starts out as a punchline, but it turns out to be a real thing. This is actually what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, Krugman, if you watched him before the first Trump election, oh my God, things were so dire. The country was going to go into bankruptcy and it was going to default on all the loans. And, if he was elected, the stock market's going to crash.
Yeah. He's one of those guys who doesn't seem to get enough of being wrong.
Yeah. And he's so smug and he's so arrogant.
And he's so wrong. All the time.
But he wins all the awards, he wins all
because his people are giving out the awards.
Yeah, all the Lucite trophies.
So we have all this debt, this massive debt. Who holds this debt? Who do we owe the money to?
Well, about 20% is owned by the government, by government trust funds, 80% by the public. But of that, 2/3 of the U.S. investors and institutions, including the Fed, and about 1/3 of the debt is held by foreign governments, primarily Japan and China.
Yeah, and primarily China.
And they're our adversary, and they hold the debt. I mean, that is a terrifying thought. The further we go into debt, the more China holds over our head to pull the strings of what happens to the U.S. economy. I mean, it's terrifying.
It's kind of a symbiotic relationship in a way, because if we paid off that debt and didn't borrow from them anymore, they'd be in deep trouble. They need to be loaning us this money. It's not a stable situation, or it doesn't seem like it is.
It's sort of like, going into debt, gambling, and borrowing money from a loan shark.
Yeah.
It's not in their best interest to give you the best deal, or they can use it as leverage in so many ways. Just to say it again, 1/3 of all the debt, and that's $37 trillion, is held by foreign governments.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Here's the terrifying problem. As I said, sooner or later, we will come to a point where the interest payment alone will be more than our total federal revenues. In other words, it's possible we could default on the loan.
We owe more every month in interest payments than we take in.
Not just possible. If we don't get it under control, it is inevitable.
It is inevitable. It's going to happen.
We will default. What happens if we just didn't pay? If we came up short, well, the first thing that happens is that our credit rating is going to take a hit. Now, people don't often think about this, but just like an individual, the United States has a credit rating.
Sure. All countries do, or everybody participating in the world economy. Yeah.
The credit ratings, instead of like Equifax and things like
Right.
that, it's Moody's, Standard and Poor's, some others. Right now, we're not a AAA credit anymore.
Not anymore.
It was downgraded, I guess this past spring, it was downgraded from a AAA to something less than AAA.
Yeah.
AA1 or something like that. These ratings, just like with individuals, determine interest rates. We are a greater risk. We pay a greater interest rate.
Right. And I mean, if you think about that in personal terms, if you have a loan on your home, a mortgage, and it's a flexible loan, and all of a sudden you go from 3.5% interest to 7% interest, what does that do?
Well, you can only go up 1 percentage point a year.
But I'm saying over time.
Over time, yeah.
I mean, what does that do to your financial situation?
Well,
and your cash flow? And that's the same thing that we're looking at as a nation, as a country.
Well, and the problem is that if the interest payment, if we can't make it at the lower interest rate, we're sure not going to be able to make it at the higher interest rate, because, almost overnight, a $1 trillion in interest could come to 1.2 trillion.
Right.
And 1.4 trillion. That makes a huge difference. The other problem is that US currency could take a hit. I'm not sure what that would actually mean in practical terms, but we know that the US dollar is not backed by gold or anything else.
Right. That's for sure.
Other than full faith and credit in the US government. That's the only thing back in our currency. And it means that we're good for it, and we are good for it. But if we take a hit on our credit, it means we're not so good for it.
Yeah. And if interest rates go up, like you said, the payments grow, but also it leaves less money to pay for things like entitlements or defense,
The things that we really do need.
What do you do?
So that means less money to pay for all of these things, less private money available for investment, because those interest rates and those payments will crowd out investments.
Right.
So you get a downward spiral.
Yeah. And imagine if China, we spoke earlier, that holds so much of our debt, if we get into such a poor position,
Right.
like you said, our credit rating falls and our debt rises. What if they decided to call in all those loans? That would be the end. I mean, you think that the stock market crash of the 20s was bad?
Right.
This would be something you can't even envision. If China and Japan and other countries said, we don't feel good about where the United States is going, we want our money.
That's a kind of a worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously. And it's not likely, as things stand currently, they're not going to want to do that. But things could change. We can see this coming. The time to do something about this, obviously, is now. Think about it this way. There are people who warn us about that so-and-so wants to cut our Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Those things are going to get cut one way or another.
Yeah.
They will either get cut when we do, like you say, and look at these programs and find out ways to make savings, not to cut people's benefits, but to shore up the system.
Right.
Or they will get cut when the interest payment crowds out all other spending and, there's no money.
There's no money. Yeah. And then it's going to be ugly for the recipients because you have no choice but to cut benefits.
So there's a few things that need to be done, and they need to be done
absolutely
starting now, because it's going to take some time and we can't wait. First thing we got to do, there's two ways to get out of debt. You increase your revenues or you decrease your spending.
That's it.
First thing, you increase revenues. Now some people immediately think of raising taxes. Wrong.
Who would that be?
Yeah, that's not the answer. Okay. As we talked about, and we talk about this in a separate episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get that episode. That, we are at a point where raising tax rates is not going to increase revenues.
No.
And we'll tell you all about how that works. But there are other ways to raise revenues, fees and tariffs and things like that. The current administration is all about tariffs, and we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, we could be looking at a much different picture
in a year or two,
in a year or so from these tariffs.
Absolutely.
But we'll see. We'll have to see.
Well, the big one is decreasing spending. We should look at how to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse first, because there's an epidemic of waste, fraud, and abuse in the United States government. That sound familiar? Remember Doge?
I still remember Doge. It was just this year.
You have to give credit to the current administration. This is a numbers guy. And the people that work for President Trump and his administration, for the most part, are business people. They understand making a payroll. They understand making payments.
Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick and these guys, they're all business people.
Those aren't the kind of people we've seen in the past in other administrations. No. We've seen politicians. So the first thing President Trump did when he got in was set up Doge. And what did he get? He got a bunch of crap for it. But the fact is, they're trying.
He knew he was going to, though.
But at least they're trying to look at it. And why can't both sides get together and realize this is an issue? And, we've got to do something to cut our costs. Right. Also, we need to establish spending controls. Right now we don't know where the money goes half the time. That's one of the big issues that Doge found in USAID and other programs that
they're
NGOs,
just writing checks and we have no idea where that money's going.
There's no accounting. They've got literally billions of dollars that are just not accounted for. Where to go?
Right.
Wow. Well, went to this NGO and they distributed it. It's up to them where it goes. That's got to be eliminated. We can't do that as a country.
Right.
We need to cut unnecessary and duplicated programs, which is another thing Doge is looking at.
There are certain sacred cows that have just been getting money year after year after year. They have a constituency, but they're not helping anything. They're just soaking up money. Department of Education comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, they've done a lot
of money spending. And what do they do? The Department of Energy. What does the Department of Energy do?
Right.
I don't know.
They spend
a lot of money,
hundreds of billions of dollars every year with really, some could argue, very little results.
Right.
And finally, I would say, don't start wars. Okay. Because what do we say earlier? When we go into war, it increases our debt dramatically.
Right. Wars are expensive.
Wars are expensive. And certainly the wars we've been in the last couple decades have just been, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, I think you'll agree, worthless wars. Really, what was the point for the United States to be in some of these places?
All that money just disappears, just goes right down the crapper.
Not to mention human lives,
Not to mention human lives.
Our men and women. So
now I think the real meat of the problem or the solution here is to grow the economy. That's really the only practical way out of it. When was the last time that the United States had a balanced budget? It was actually the end of the 1990s or early 2000s, at the end of the Clinton administration, beginning of the Bush administration. And it was because the strong economic growth.
Right.
They had a bill in place to balance the budget by 2003 or something like that.
Newt Gingrich. It didn't take till 2003. They got it by 1998. They had a balanced budget because the economy grows. It's extremely important. First of all, it's a hedge against an economic downturn. Mm-hmm. If the economy is growing, if things start to go south a little bit, you at least have some warning and some cushion there. Also, more economic activity obviously leads to more tax revenues. We talk about that in our taxes episode. A larger pie means larger pieces for everybody, including the government. And the other thing is we get an improved debt to GDP ratio. When you're at 100+% of GDP, that's unsustainable. 70, 80, 90% of GDP. Okay, we're back in a range that's manageable, and that's from larger GDP. You have to increase gross domestic product. So these are ways that you can prevent a full-blown debt crisis. But if we don't do it, we're screwed.
And if we don't start soon, and I think I see the beginnings of that mindset creeping in that we have to do this and we have to start right away. Yeah, we're screwed.
Luckily, we have by far the largest economy on earth. And that helps us. I mean, it helps us that the American dollar is the standard. But, people have talked about that changing too. Our GDP is something in the neighborhood of 30 trillion right now. China is the closest second, and they're only at 20 trillion.
2/3 of what we do.
Right. Yeah. And then when you get below that, they're not even close. So we have a tremendous opportunity with this.
We are still the big dogs.
Because of the size of our economy.
Position.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, exactly.
Which is another reason why the Chinese are probably none too keen to be calling in those debts.
That's right.
That's revenue.
Yeah.
They need that revenue.
That was strictly a scare tactic, my friend. So thanks for blowing that up for me.
But it's not outlandish. I mean, it could come to that.
I mean, if it got bad enough, but also, I mean, let's just be honest here. Politicians need to be brave. They need to make tough choices. That's why they're elected.
Yep.
And any solutions are going to take time to implement and time to take effect. It can't just keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, look what they do with spending bills. Jeez. They shut the government down every freaking year because these people just don't want to do their jobs.
That's all it is.
But they go take a month vacation in August instead of working on it. And the old days of the Democrats and the Republicans getting together and having a beer in a bar at the end of the day and talking.
I would like to see that come back.
We'd love to see that.
Yes.
We'd love to see some reasonable politicians again. It's the right thing to do.
Well, if you agree with that, write us a comment down below. We want to hear your thoughts on this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all the other topics that are related to debt, taxes, and democracy. These are really important to understand, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.
All right, Phil, it's time for our PoC Top 3. This week, it's our all-time sports heroes. You go first.
All-time sports heroes.
Top 3.
Being a local DC homer kind of a fan.
Yeah, man.
I go back to the Washington Redskins for my number 3 and the great John Riggins.
Oh,
I loved watching him run. He was just a big freight train of a guy who just bowled people over. He had a great Super Bowl run, and that Super Bowl 17 against Miami where he just took it to the house.
Oh, man.
That was one of the greatest moments of my professional fandom career.
Me too, brother.
Number 2, and I'm sticking with football, but not a player this time. I'm going with Nick Saban. I became an Alabama fan when my daughter went to the University of Alabama. She started the same year as Nick Saban. And so I go down to visit. We go to games, and of course, it's Alabama, and they were winning championships. How are you not?
Oh, yeah, they were.
But
something.
Nick Saban was something else. He is the greatest of all time. And the reason is because he concentrated on building up good men,
Character.
Not just good players, but good men. Mm-hmm. And from there, good players. And, he had more first round draft choices to the NFL, more total draft choices, more starting quarterbacks, more, MVP. And they didn't come like that out of high school. He developed them.
True.
Nick Saban is the greatest of all time. Number 1.
Uh-oh, drum roll.
And we're back at Washington. Alex Ovechkin, the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL, and soon to be the only member of the 900 goal club.
Wow, that is something.
It's just astounding. And being a Capitals fan all these years and being able to watch Alex play week in and week out, what a treat. This guy is just magical.
Dude, I got a framed picture 2 feet in front of my face right now that was taken at the game in Chicago when he scored his 800th goal. I was there.
Oh,
yeah, I've got that picture right here.
I've got a framed picture of Ovechkin hoisting the Stanley Cup, autographed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. You want to hear my top 3?
No. I mean, yes. Oh. Yes, I do.
I'm starting with a tennis player.
Oh, I love tennis.
Billie Jean King.
Oh, yeah.
Not only due to the fact that she was one of the great women tennis players of all time, but
Right.
what she did for women tennis players is pretty phenomenal. And I really learned about that by watching that movie, Battle of the Sexes. Have you seen that?
No, but I do remember the battle of the sexes between him
that was
and what was the guy's name?
Bobby Riggs.
Bobby Riggs, yes.
You and I are of an age where that was a huge
event.
deal. Oh my gosh, that was huge. Well, the movie's really good. Steve Carell does a really great job of playing Bobby Riggs.
Okay.
And Emma Stone,
Okay.
she plays Billie Jean. But
I have to see
it
that.
really tells the history of what she did for women tennis and how she broke away from the norm because they weren't getting paid enough.
Right. She started the Virginia Slims.
Virginia Slims.
Yes.
It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. My number 2, Cal Ripken Jr.
Oh, yeah. The Iron Man.
One of the great baseball players, in my opinion, of all time. Again, he played from 81 to 2001.
Played for
His
Baltimore.
entire career, his entire career was with the Orioles. And plus, he was just a good guy.
Yeah.
Really good guy.
Yeah.
And my number 1, speaking of good guys, going back again, Washington Redskins, Sonny Jurgensen.
Woohoo.
Because he was my hero growing up as a kid, and I had his jersey. He's 91 years old. He's my dad's age right now.
Wow.
And he went on to do broadcasting, and he was really good at that. Him and Sam Huff, remember, listen to those guys. We used to watch the Redskins on TV, and we'd turn the TV down and listen to him on the radio because he was so
Listen to
good.
Sonny and Sam and Frank.
That's our top 3 for this week.
All right, Jay. Well, now it's time for our news you can't use.
What you got?
This is astounding to me. This is from a website called townhall.com. It's a political commentary, kind of a right-wing political commentary.
It's a good site.
But this is not political. This is about a 3,000-year-old artifact, a gold bracelet
Wow.
that was stolen from the Cairo Museum. It's the Grand Egyptian Museum. It hadn't even opened yet. It's slated to open in November. A must-see destination, apparently, boasting the world's largest museum devoted to a single civilization, the ancient Egyptians.
That's on my bucket list, bro, going to Egypt and seeing that stuff.
Some things have been held up by this whole Israel and Hamas war, but there is another apparent setback. One of its sister museums in Cairo became home to a high-profile theft. A 3,000-year-old gold bracelet belonging to Pharaoh Amenhotep. No, I'm sorry, Amenepopi or something like. It's not Amenhotep, but
you can't read those things.
those Egyptian pharaohs have like 17-syllable names. It's not Amenepopi.
Close enough.
Something like that. It was stolen from the Egyptian Museum, and investigators discovered that this artifact was stolen and melted for scrap.
Oh my God.
It was melted for the gold.
Oh,
I mean, this is not like your gold teeth. This is a 3,000-year-old bracelet
oh my God.
belonging to a pharaoh. And someone took it and
How
melted
did they figure
it
out it got
down
melted
for
down?
scrap.
How do they know that?
I don't
Doesn't
know.
say?
It weighed approximately 600 grams. It had a bead of lapis lazuli. It dates back to the 900s, almost 1,000 BC.
I sure hope they have some good pictures of it, man.
They do
Oh,
have
that
a good
sucks.
picture of it. It was on display, but it is no more. So that
Sad
is
news. Sad
that's
news.
quite a shame. Well, folks, once again, that is our show. And we are glad you joined us for this episode. Please like, share, follow, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you here next time on the Physics of Civics.